If your company has been using AI for a while, you probably have a few workflows that feel pretty settled. Maybe your team built them 6 or 8 months ago. They took effort to build. Someone tested the prompts, fixed the output, created a spreadsheet, wrote instructions, and showed other people how to use the process. And today, the workflow still works. No one's complaining, the result is usable, people know what to do, a task comes in, the team follows the process, AI helps them finish faster, and everyone moves on. So from the outside, nothing looks wrong. But here's a question I want you to think about. If you removed most of the steps in that workflow now and gave the simpler version to today's AI, would the result be worse or better? For many workflows, the answer may actually be better. I say this because I tried it with my own company. Some steps that once felt necessary were no longer helping. A few workflows we had spent weeks building had quietly become outdated. The tricky part is that a workflow can be outdated without looking broken. When a workflow breaks, people complain. When a workflow is slow but familiar, people usually keep using it. So today's video is not about asking, what should we add AI to next? Most companies are already asking that question. This video is about looking back at what your team has already built and asking a different question. Which steps still create value and which steps are just leftovers from an older version of AI? And why is this important? Why not just let old AI workflows keep running, even if they're slow? The reason is that speed is only one part of the cost. An old AI workflow may still give you a usable result, but it can also keep your team doing support work that today's AI no longer needs, like splitting inputs, creating extra summary tables, or checking intermediate outputs that the model can now handle more directly. And sometimes the bigger problem is not the time, it's the quality of the decision. When the workflow reduces the original information too early, AI may be working from a shortened version of the task instead of the full context. So reviewing old workflows isn't about chasing every new AI update. It's about making sure the process still gives your team enough context, clear evidence, and the right human checkpoints. Now, to be clear, you don't need to know how to code. You don't need to rebuild your whole system. You only need one AI workflow your team already uses, about 30 minutes, and an AI tool such as ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini. Okay, now we're going to use one workflow and test whether today's AI can handle more of the work directly. Before we get into the guide, let's first talk about a simple way to read any AI workflow. Most steps belong to one of two groups. The first group is made of steps that exist because of AI's limitations. These are support steps your team created because the AI tool back then had limits. For example, maybe your team had to split one long document into smaller parts because the AI couldn't process the whole file. Maybe you had to ask in 4 separate rounds because one big request produced an incomplete answer. Maybe you had to remind the tool to only use information from the document because it often added things that weren't there. Those steps weren't unreasonable. At the time, they may have been exactly what your team needed, but they were created to work around AI's limits. The second group is made of steps that exist because of the work itself. These are steps your company still needs, no matter how strong AI becomes. For example, someone may need to pull data from the system your company treats as the source of truth. The output may need to be scored against company criteria. Or a human may need to approve the final answer before it goes to a customer, candidate, vendor, or partner. These steps are different. They're not there because AI is weak. They're there because the work needs accountability, business context, access to internal information, or a record people can return to later. Here's a simple mental model. Steps created because of AI's limitations have an expiration date. Steps created because of the work don't expire in the same way. So when you look at an old workflow, don't ask only, does this step still work? Ask, why does this step exist? If it exists because the old AI couldn't do something, then you should test whether today's AI can handle that part directly. If it exists because people need to make a decision, check evidence, apply company criteria, or take responsibility, then keep it. Old steps stay in place for two reasons. First, the workflow isn't completely broken, so no one complains. And second, most companies have a process for adding work, but not for removing work. A new workflow has an approver, a budget, and a deadline. Removing an outdated step often has no clear owner. So AI keeps getting stronger in the background. Your workflow stays still. Nothing inside the company tells you, now is the time to review this. That's why reviewing old AI workflows is ultimately a business leader's responsibility, not only a technical team's responsibility. Business leaders don't need to know how to code, but they do need to ask whether the way the company works still matches what the technology can now do. The easiest way to run this test is to start with one workflow, not with your whole company. You need one AI tool, such as ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini. Then choose one AI workflow your team already uses. Don't start with the largest or most sensitive workflow in the company. Pick something real but manageable. Ideally, choose something your team runs often enough that improving it would save time. For this walkthrough, we'll use a hiring workflow from an edtech company with about 45 employees. During each hiring round, HR may receive dozens, sometimes hundreds of applications, and the team needs to create a smaller group of candidates for the department head to review. 8 months ago, the company built a 4-step AI workflow. First, AI reads each resume and extracts information into a fixed template. Second, HR gathers all extracted results into one shared table. Third, the team gives that table to AI, together with a job description and hiring criteria, and asks AI to rank, score, and recommend the strongest profiles. Fourth, HR and the department head go back to the original resumes, check the evidence, and decide who should be invited to interview. At the time, this workflow made sense. Older AI tools weren't always reliable when reading many profiles and keeping the evaluation stable in one pass. So the team broke the work into smaller pieces. Step 1, label each step. Start by writing down the workflow in plain language. Don't make it fancy, just list what actually happens. Then ask one question for each step. Does this step exist because the work requires it, or because the AI at that time couldn't do better? In the hiring workflow, that question separates the old workarounds from the parts HR still needs to own. The first step is asking AI to read each resume and extract information into a fixed template. This existed because older AI had trouble reading many profiles, remembering all the criteria, comparing candidates fairly, and giving a stable answer in one pass. So the team forced every resume into the same structure first. That was useful then, but it shouldn't stay that way forever by default. The second step is gathering all extracted results into one shared table. Again, ask why this exists. The table isn't the final business outcome. The company isn't hiring someone because a spreadsheet exists. The table is an intermediate layer created so AI can process the candidates more easily. So the first 2 steps mostly belong to the group created to support older AI. They may now be candidates for removal or redesign. Now let's look at the third step, evaluating candidates based on the job description and hiring criteria. Now this is real work. The company still needs to define what a strong candidate looks like, compare profiles against the role, and ask for evidence. But the evaluation doesn't necessarily need to happen after the team has created a summary table. Today's AI may be able to read the original resumes and apply the criteria in the same round. So the evaluation should stay, but the way it happens may change. Finally, look at the 4th step. HR and the department head review the original resume before making interview decisions. This step should stay, not because AI is weak. It should stay because hiring decisions need human responsibility. AI can prioritize and point to evidence, but people still need to check unclear information and decide who moves forward. So from the original 4 steps, 2 steps may be removed, 1 step may be merged into a simpler AI request, and 1 step should remain as a human review step. Label each step by its reason for existing. Once you know the reason, you can decide whether the step should be kept, merged, redesigned, or removed. Step 2. Run the workflow again with 1 request. After you identify the steps that were mainly created to support old AI, try the workflow again in a simpler way. In the hiring example, we stop extracting each resume into fixed fields first. We stop gathering those fields into a separate table. Instead, we put the candidate profiles, job description, and hiring criteria together in 1 folder. Then, we upload or attach that folder and give AI 1 clear request. The request might sound like this. The key change is the source material AI gets to work from. AI is no longer evaluating candidates from a thin summary table. It reads the original profiles directly. It sees the full context behind the experience. It can compare each candidate against the same criteria without losing detail too early. This is how the new workflow can improve quality, not just speed. In the old workflow, the resume gets compressed before evaluation begins. The spreadsheet may show years of experience, job titles, industry, and key skills. Those fields are useful, but they don't always show the shape of a person's work. A fixed table may flatten the difference between someone with many years but little growth and someone with fewer years but faster growth and clearer results. But be careful here. At this step, AI is only creating a priority list for HR to review. It's not making the final hiring decision. It should mark missing information, say when something is unclear, and show evidence instead of pretending to know more than the resume provides. So the new workflow removes unnecessary middle steps, but it doesn't remove human judgment. Step 3, compare the old and the new results. Now place the old result and the new result side by side. Don't look only at the final ranking. Look at how each result explains its choices. The old workflow may be faster to scan because it turns each resume into fixed fields, then scores the candidates and divides them into priority groups. That can be useful for quick screening, but the trade-off is that important details may get shortened too early. By the time AI starts evaluating, it may only see the summarized version of the candidate. It may not see how complex the candidate's work was, how much ownership they had, or how quickly their scope grew. The new workflow skips the intermediate summary. AI reads the resume directly with the job description and criteria. So the result should not only say who is priority A or priority B, it should point to evidence, show unclear areas, and name what HR needs to verify next. Let's take a look at a sample candidate and how the comparison is useful. In the old result, Laura Bennett was ranked priority A because she had many years of experience, large clients, and strong renewal results. In the new result, Laura moved down to priority B. She's still strong in enterprise customer management, but there wasn't enough recent evidence that she directly built new customer relationships from the beginning or owned the full business development cycle. To summarize, you're not asking, did the new AI produce a cleaner looking answer? You're asking, does the new workflow help people make a better decision with clearer evidence? Step 4, choose the approach and put it into action. After creating the new workflow, run both the new and the old workflow in parallel. After a week or 2, compare the 2 results and decide which workflow becomes official. There are usually 3 situations. First, the new workflow may produce better results. If that happens, remove the intermediate steps that no longer add value. In the first few runs, monitor whether AI is citing real evidence, following the criteria, and creating a priority list HR can use. Don't remove the human review step. Just remove the parts that were only there to help the old AI. The second scenario is where the old and new results may be about the same. If quality is similar, the simpler workflow is still worth considering. Fewer steps means less processing time, fewer repeated actions, and fewer places where mistakes can creep in. And the third scenario is the new workflow may be worse. If that happens, keep the current approach for now. But don't simply conclude, oh, the new approach doesn't work here. Instead, record exactly where it failed. Did it miss important information? Did it misunderstand the criteria? Did it overvalue polished resume writing? Did the prompt give too little guidance? Were the hiring criteria too vague? When you record the weaknesses clearly, you know what to improve next. Maybe the prompt needs work. Maybe the criteria needs to be sharper. Maybe the input documents need to be better organized. Once the new workflow has worked well for a few runs, stop running both workflows in parallel and document the new workflow clearly. Save the input documents, the prompt, the hiring criteria, the expected output structure, and the final human checking step. This way, other people on the team can use the workflow consistently without having to guess how it works. One more note before you remove an old step. Record why the old step was created in the first place. The old extraction table may have helped HR process hundreds of profiles over many months. The fact that it's no longer needed today doesn't mean the original work was useless. It just means the original workaround completed its job for that stage. To say it plainly, the extraction and consolidated steps helped us work with the AI tools we had before. Now AI can process that part directly. We're keeping the criteria and evidence review because those parts reflect our own business judgment. This helps to track the evolution of the workflow. The old workflow helped the team before, and the new workflow fits what AI can do now. Now, simplifying a workflow doesn't mean giving AI more authority than it should have. When teams get excited about removing steps, they sometimes remove the wrong ones. Use these 3 principles to decide which controls still need to stay. The first principle, not every manual step is wasted time. In the hiring example, HR and the department head still need to review the profiles. AI can sort and point to evidence, but people still need to verify unclear points and make the final decision. If the work affects customers, employees, candidates, partners, money, legal commitments, or reputation, keep a clear human review point. The second principle, a newer AI model is not automatically better for your work. It may read longer documents and understand context better, but it can still make practical mistakes. In hiring, it may overvalue a resume that's written beautifully but has thin evidence. It may misunderstand internal criteria that your team uses in a very specific way. The third principle, chasing every AI update can also become wasted time. You don't need to review every workflow every time an AI tool adds a small feature. If your team changes their workflow every week, people will lose consistency. They won't know which prompt is official or what quality standard to use. Use a rhythm the team can actually maintain. Review important AI workflows once every 3 months or after a major AI model upgrade. For smaller workflows, review them when the pain becomes visible. For example, when there are too many steps, lower output quality, higher work volume, or a new AI version that clearly handles the old pain point better. The goal is not to constantly rebuild. The goal is to keep the workflow aligned with what AI can now do and what your business still needs people to own. Old AI workflows are sometimes like a detour that was opened before the bridge was ready. At the time, the detour made sense. It kept work moving. The problem begins when the bridge is finished, but everyone keeps taking the old road because it's familiar. An AI workflow can follow the same pattern. A process may stay in place not because it's still the best way to work, but because the original assumption became invisible. People stop asking why the step exists. So reviewing the workflow isn't just about cutting steps. It's about checking old assumptions, seeing which limits of AI are no longer true, and protecting the parts where people still create value, such as defining criteria, checking evidence, taking responsibility, and making decisions. If you want to try this after the video, start with one workflow. Write down the steps. For each step, ask, does this exist because the work requires it, or because the old AI couldn't do better? Then, test a simpler version. Compare the old result with the new result. Keep the parts that create real value. Remove or merge the parts that were only workarounds for older AI. You don't need to turn this into a huge company project. Start with one workflow your team uses often. And in 30 minutes, you may find a step that no longer needs to exist. If you want more practical ways to use AI in daily operations, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next implementation guide.